She is. Hi, Jenny.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm all right. Yourself?
Yes, I'm really good, thank you. So,
Fabulous.
welcome to the Latte Lounge. And I'm going to do a quick introduction to you before we kick off so everyone knows who you are. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Jenny Carson, who is the Senior Nutritionist at ethical vitamin company Viridian Nutrition. We're going to be here for about half an hour, and we'll keep some time at the end if there are any questions that you may want Jenny to answer. We're going to be talking today about brain health. In particular, we're going to be focusing on brain fog, which is a very common symptom of the menopause. A lot of women complain about low mood, anxiety in midlife menopause and beyond. So thank you, Jenny, for joining us. Now, Jenny is a senior nutritionist at the ethical vitamin company Viridian Nutrition. She's got over 5 years experience supporting people with nutritional health advice. And she recently completed a Master of Research in Public Health, giving her a wider understanding of public health nutrition. And Jenny's other focus areas include aging, dealing with stress, peri and postmenopause, detox and mood. So Jenny, look, we always talk about sort of my journey, but we've had a lot of new followers recently who may not know my own story. And actually, from the ages of 43 for about 4 years, one of the worst perimenopausal symptoms I suffered was this brain fog. And I just thought I was going crazy. I was forgetting words. A lot of my friends were almost sort of making fun of me and laughing and saying, "Oh, you're such an old woman." And none of my doctors even put two and two together and thought this was a menopause or perimenopause symptom. And the most frightening thing was I was actually sent to a neurologist who, they were checking out whether it was a sign of early onset dementia. So I'm sure a lot of women who are watching will probably relate to my journey. So I just thought we'd start off, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what happens, to our brain during these sort of years from 40 onwards, and why this symptom of brain fog happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can relate to what you've just described. Myself, I do experience like the loss of words, forgetting where I've put things, and it can be quite upsetting and at times quite frustrating as well. So yeah, I can completely empathize. But I do feel that understanding what exactly is going on within the brain can actually help with the feelings of stress and frustration that do come with brain fog. So whenever there's hormonal change, whether that's hormonal disruption, hormonal development, or in the case of menopause where certain hormones are decreasing, that has a direct effect on our brain. So our brain, full of brain cells, and each of those brain cells will have receptors for various hormones. Now, hormones are signaling agents. When they bind to a receptor, they're binding because they're actually exerting effect within the cell itself. So the main sex hormone for women is estrogen, and that is one that we often focus on and really look at in terms of menopause. So estrogen's role within the brain, when it binds to a receptor, it promotes what are called synapses. And synapses are the gap between the brain cells where electrical activity, which are called neurotransmitters because they're signaling, occurs. So when we're in our reproductive years, we've got sufficient amounts of estrogen, that's very promoting for these synapses. And that's really important because if we've got a good quality and good amount of these synapses, that means that one specific, very important neurotransmitter can work effectively. And that neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, and that's the neurotransmitter that helps us with memory, helps us with cognition, knowledge acquisition, memory recall. So remembering where you put your phone down or your keys, your glasses, what did you come upstairs for, that type. So in reproductive years, estrogen is at a good level, that's promoting for synapses and promoting for effective signaling between the two brain cells, or multiple brain cells. So when we see a change in hormones, such as that occurs in line with menstrual cycle, or that would be characteristic of menopause and perimenopause, then we're seeing a decrease of estrogen, which is decreasing the promotion of the synapses, which ultimately is reducing brain activity, especially in the area that is responsible for memory and cognition. And what that does, part of it is starts inducing those feelings of brain fog, and when you're doing a crossword you can't quite bring a word to mind, or maybe even in a conversation. So that's sort of the physiology, that's the background of what's going on. What's really encouraging and inspiring is by making simple dietary changes, you can make the best of what available estrogen is there. So you can really sort of buffer those effects.
So let's talk a little bit about nutrients. What nutrients do nourish the brain?
Okay, so I always count this as my basic foundation when it comes to supporting not only brain health, but supporting hormone production. And what I really like about it is that all these nutrients work in both areas. So the nutrients I'm going to chat about and the different foods and where you can get them, they'll not only support a good amount of, or let's not say a good amount of estrogen, but maybe efficient estrogen production. So the smaller amounts that are still being produced, they'll be produced in an efficient manner, but it's those same nutrients that actually support brain health as well. So it's almost like a double win. So when you're thinking about laying down and making that foundation good and solid, what we need to do, we need to start off with some saturated fat. And I know this is completely contrary to, public health messages over the previous decades where, we've almost been sort of fat is bad. And to a degree, a very highly processed fat, I would completely agree. And commercially raised fat sources, again, I wouldn't say they were good sources. But if you can get a good quality saturated fat, so if you're looking at things like animal products and eggs, going for the organic and the grass raised, they're going to provide a good amount of saturated fat. Now, we only need a small amount. But it's the quality that's really important, because that's going to transpose then into good quality hormone production. So we've talked about getting the saturated fats in one or two of our meals on a daily basis to support that saturated fat to then be produced and transformed into sex hormones, and specifically estrogen. We're looking at supporting that fat with magnesium, B vitamins and vitamin D. So magnesium plays a highly important role in hormone production, but it also plays a role in neurotransmitter production. So the types of foods that are rich in magnesium, you'd be looking at your leafy greens, so your kale, your spinach, your lamb's lettuce, watercress, and plus whole grains. Make sure that the husk is still on. So say you're looking at barley, don't opt for the pearl barley because that's been rubbed off, but look for the entire whole grain. That's going to be really rich in B vitamins and magnesium. And then also things like nuts and seeds. So to the magnesium, you're going to add the B vitamin family. Now, the first one that I'll talk about is called choline, and the reason I'm talking about it first is because it actually contributes to the production of that neurotransmitter that we talked about before, which is called acetylcholine. So you can tell from the name, choline is a main structure, main part of the structure within it. So you're going to get choline from oily fish, from eggs, specifically the egg yolk. Now, there are very, very few vegan, vegetarian options for choline. You get a very small amount from legumes. Our livers can make a very, very small amount. But I would say if you are following a vegan, vegetarian diet, you probably want to maybe have a look at food supplementing with choline, just to support that brain function. Now, the rest of the B vitamins that are really important in terms of hormone production and brain function are B2, B5, B6, B12 and folate. So if we talk about B12 and folate first, B12 is one of the only B vitamins that you have to get from animal sources. There are no sort of vegetarian sources. So again, for our vegan viewers, you probably want to consider, or you do want to consider, food supplements. Now, there are also nutritional yeasts that are fortified with B12, so they can make a nice option, and they're great adding to soups and stews, etc. Now, the other B vitamins, you're going to get them from things like mushrooms, leafy greens. There's a bit of B vitamins in dairy, eggs and animal products as well. So that's your B family. And then finally, looking at vitamin D. Now, we always associate vitamin D with supporting our immune function, and I think that's been a topic that has been very common in the media at the minute with the COVID-19 pandemic. But what's key to know about vitamin D is that vitamin D plays a key role in regulating inflammation. And one of the links between brain fog and stress is that there can be inflammation within the brain that's driving those effects. So if you've got a good amount of vitamin D in your diet, whether that's from oily fish, eggs, milk, or you're using a food supplement, getting a good amount in is going to regulate any inflammation. And specifically, if there is a link there, you've got maybe a stressful lifestyle and you're experiencing quite a lot of brain fog, or the stress is, related to the transitioning of hormones and menopause, then I would definitely say looking at getting good amounts of vitamin D into your diet would be a good option. I would class that as your foundation. So just to recap, you're looking at getting some good saturated fats in your diet. You want to support that with magnesium and B vitamins and vitamin D. So I always like to work in sort of 10-12 week blocks. So try and do that for 10 to 12 weeks. Maybe keep a food diary. What did you eat and how was your brain fog in relation to the diet? And over that period of 10-12 weeks, did you see any changes? Is it improving? And from there you can get a gauge on what's working for you, what isn't working for you, and where you can start to refine it and adapt and alter. And it can be really useful as well to log mood, because I know for myself, when I'm forgetting words or if I feel a bit sort of everything's a bit fuzzy, I actually get quite frustrated with myself, and that can affect my mood and my feelings of well-being. So if you're also logging sort of mood alongside, you can also get an idea as to, is this nutritional strategy also improving how I'm feeling about myself and my outlook, and so on. So yeah, I would say that use that as your foundation, and then at the 10-12 weeks, reassess. And if you do need a little bit more, then the next two compounds I'm going to talk about might be options for you. So the first one that I'd like to say is as an add-on strategy would be maca. Now, maca looks like a parsnip, and it grows in the high Andes in Peru. Now, this is a location where agriculture is a very difficult lifestyle. There's extreme temperatures and extreme climate in these locations. So the people that live in those areas really do need to be sort of strong and resilient. And it's thought that the quantity of maca that these people consume is what contributes to their strength and resilience. So initially, maca, a lot of interest around it was because of its strengthening, its support of energy production and endurance. And when people started to look at it a little bit more, it was found that maca could improve our response to stressful events. So it's considered an adaptogenic herb, meaning that cortisol, which is the stress hormone, if that is too low, maca can just gently buffer that up. But if cortisol is too high, it can gently buffer that down. Now, what that means in terms of brain health is if you've got more balanced cortisol production rather than elevated peaks and troughs, that's not going to have that exhausting effect, which is often a trigger for feelings of brain fog and poor brain function. So maca is very much thought of as an adaptogen. So that then led researchers to think, hang on, what other scenarios do we experience brain fog in? And so that triggered more investigation around menopause and perimenopause. And this is where some really interesting results were found. So what was reported was that using 3 grams of maca on a daily basis, or the equivalent if an individual is using maca extract, was found to improve the symptoms of menopause. And the bit I really sort of clicked with me was when I read further down in the paper that the researchers did a lot of interviewing around depressive states and how people were feeling, how their brain was functioning. These were the ladies participating in the study, and they found that those that used the maca actually had fewer depressive episodes, felt that their irritability levels and their stress levels were greatly improved, and that was then reflected on how they felt that their brain was functioning. So if maca is something that interests you, I definitely say there's lots of different types out there. Maca also comes in 3 different colours. You can often get a blend of the 3, so I would say go for that, because there are a lot of nutrients that are linked to specific pigments. So if you're getting 3 colours, then you're getting the pigments from each of those colours. And it's a really flexible, you can buy it as food supplements, you can buy it as powders, so you can add it to smoothies, add it to porridge, all sorts of different combinations. So it is quite a flexible option in terms of squeezing it into the diet. And I would say 3 grams is the key, or if you're using an extract, whatever the value of the extract is that's the equivalent to 3 grams would be a really good starting point. Okay. The other herb that I'd like to talk about, or spice, and this is the final one because I feel like I've been waffling on for ages.
No, not at all.
is saffron. So we all know, what a fabulous spice. We use it in risottos and various Middle Eastern dishes. But saffron is been shown in research to work on a comparable level as antidepressant medication. So very, promoting of feelings of well-being. And I think when you've got the feelings of well-being, brain function is better because your stress levels are lowered and you're feeling calmer in general. So saffron specifically, you would be looking at about 30 milligrams daily. So that would be the equivalent of a couple of the stigma if you're using it in a culinary fashion. Or if you're looking at supplementing it, then make sure you're taking a dose that's the equivalent of 30 milligrams. So I would say, your foundation is your saturated fats, your magnesium, your B vitamins and your vitamin D. And if you feel you want an additional strategy to layer on top, then have a look at either maca or saffron. Yeah,
it was really helpful, Jenny, and I don't want people to get overwhelmed that they might have forgotten, because we're going to put all of this into a blog, and we're going to save the video, so it'll be on our website for people to remind themselves. That's really helpful. Before I talk to you about some other lifestyle issues, something just popped into my head, which I'm going to put you on the spot, and you may or may not be able to answer, but we've had a lot of people contact us, and not just women. So I'm wondering if it's not so much to do with menopause, but what you were mentioning about the swelling area of the brain. But a lot of people who have been suffering with long COVID have told us, and it's a lot of men, that they're getting brain fog. And actually someone I work with, he was describing, his brain fog, and I said, you sound like a menopausal woman. And so, something kind of just clicked with me. You were talking about this brain fog is that there's a sort of swelling. Is that, has there been research that you know of? I know they're looking into estrogen and long COVID.
Yeah, that's not something I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But part of the pathogenesis of COVID is this heightened inflammation. So it could be plausible, but that there is a link between the elevated inflammation and its effect within the brain.
Yeah, I was really interested, and it, you know, and especially as it was a man, and I'm so used to saying, oh well, it's to do with menopause, but actually, you know, there's obviously some inflammation. But look, let's talk. We've talked about food. Let's talk about lifestyle. I mean, what are the effects on things like, you know, smoking, alcohol, and sugar? You know, on our mood and brain function. Because I know one of the things I had a real problem with through those perimenopause sort of the low mood, is that you then start craving, you know, sort of comfort food and sugar, and then that's having, I'm assuming, this knock-on effect then on your brain health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want to sound like I'm going to be all doom and gloom here, but smoking and excessive alcohol and large amounts of sugar are quite toxic for the body, and they generate what are called free radicals. Free radicals are very aggressive molecules that we have to then use antioxidant nutrients to calm down and stop their activity. So in terms of brain health, you know, that's a lot more work for the body to do. So if you're thinking specifically about smoking, that is a big delivery of pollution, heavy metals, and these toxic compounds that generate these aggressive molecules. So straight away you'd be looking to you know, support these type of exposures with, it's almost where the saying of eating fruit and veggies that are a different colour of the rainbow on a daily basis, because you really do need those purples, blues, reds, yellows, oranges, greens, different coloured foods within the diet to counter the free radical attack. I mean, you know, even better if you can reduce the amount of cigarettes or vaping, or even give up, then, you know, that load, that exposure is greatly reduced. You know, and wherever there is oxidative stress, which is what's generated from the free radicals, these aggressive molecules, that automatically generates inflammation. So when we're thinking about the brain, there's not all, you know, in terms of smoking, there is the risk of damage to the fragile tissues of the brain and the fragile fats that are within the brain, but also the generation of inflammation. In terms of alcohol, ethanol itself isn't actually that bad for the human body, but
don't go off and start drinking.
Yeah, it's what our body has to transform the ethanol into to get it out of the body that's really dangerous and highly damaging. And this is why alcohol consumption is associated, or can be associated, excessive alcohol consumption, can be associated to damage within the liver, because the liver is the organ that's transforming the ethanol into the aldehydes and then detoxifying the aldehydes and eliminating. And if, you know, if detox is a bit sluggish or isn't adequately supported with nutrition, then that's when the risk of these, you know, pretty heavy duty toxins can be quite damaging. So in terms of brain health, you know, I think we've all experienced, if we've had one too many glasses of wine the night before, the next day we can feel quite groggy, foggy and tired. And although that's generating sort of characteristics of brain fog and poor function, it's because our body's redirecting what would normally be energy for the brain to our liver to get rid of all those toxins and flush it out. So it's almost as if brain health associated with alcohol consumption is a byproduct of actually, you know, eliminating it from the body. And then in terms of sugar, you know, I don't want to sound like, you know, a little bit of sugar is fine, you know, a little bit of anything is not going to do you any harm, but it's if those amounts become excessive. And one of the things with sugar is it can generate spikes of a certain neurotransmitter called dopamine. Now, dopamine is responsible for motivation. So it's dopamine that gets us up out of bed in the morning to go for a run. It's dopamine that gets us to the gym, that, you know, fuels our motivation. But when you get excessive spikes of dopamine, that's when it fuels sort of repetitive behaviours, reward-seeking behaviours. And that's why sometimes if you've eaten some large amount of sugar the same time the next day, you might end up with sugar cravings. It's reinforcing behaviours, reward-seeking behaviours. So in an ideal world, just a small amount of these compounds would help you keep a little bit more balanced. And that's why being aware of the foods that you eat, does it have any added sugars in? And if it does, can you swap it for something that doesn't? Because what you're going to do is you're going to improve the balance of the neurotransmitters, which then will naturally improve sort of brain function and move away from sort of these habitual and reward-seeking behaviours, which can be quite exhausting for the brain. One little tip when it comes to sugar: humans and guinea pigs are the only mammals that cannot make or cannot synthesize vitamin C within the body. All other mammals can, and they make vitamin C from glucose. So the glucose molecule is very similar to vitamin C molecule. So often, or there's a theory that possibly if an individual has a sugar craving, it's not sugar that they're actually craving, it's vitamin C. So a simple strategy to test it is, if you're having sugar cravings, eat something that's rich in vitamin C. So you might eat some grapes, an orange, a banana, some dates, something like that, and see if it quells that craving. Because you know, and then you kind of get in an idea of what your brain is actually wanting.
Yeah, absolutely. Good tips there. Look, we've got a few minutes left, so I really want to get to some questions, because there's a lot of women who are also looking, you know, for supplements to support their nutrition that perhaps they can't get through, you know, natural foods. And there's a lady here, Trin59, has said, really interesting, thank you. Any recommendations on the best magnesium supplements?
Best magnesium? Yeah, Trin, hi Trin, hope you're okay. In terms of magnesium, I would always say look for a magnesium that is something like magnesium citrate. I think one of the high benefits of magnesium citrate is it's very well absorbed and it's soluble. So if you are a person that's not keen on swallowing tablets and capsules, magnesium, you can just mix it into water and it will dissolve. So, and you know, studies have shown that magnesium citrate is very, very well absorbed. I mean, if you're looking at dosing, I would say look for a magnesium formula that provides about 300, 400 milligrams daily, or per serving. You would only need one serving daily. A quick sort of hack with magnesium is, if you're having issues around sleeping, taking magnesium even with your evening meal, or even 1 hour before your desired sleep, can actually be really helpful.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah. And now we've got night nurse Rachie here. She's just joined and she said, is Maca Tea okay?
Maca Tea, okay. One of the things with teas is they're fabulous for nutrients which will, for compounds which will release their nutrients in response to hot water. So I'd need to find out if maca is water soluble, i.e. the complex structure of maca. If the cell walls will break in hot water, then yes. If that will occur, then you are going to get the benefits from the tea. But can I get back to you on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to put some links afterwards where people can contact you and me. Marianne McGrath has said, examples of organic or grass raised. So I think she was possibly when we were talking right at the beginning about
Saturated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So organic or grass raised, that's in reference to any form of animal product, whether that's organic eggs, organic poultry, lamb, pork, beef, and so on. They're all foods that do have a good amount of saturated fats. Now, I do know, the extra cost that goes with that style of animal raising. However, you wouldn't need to eat it that frequently, so it might just be a couple of portions each week.
Okay, one last question from Ruthie Shenhurst. Does Viridian have a good B2 question mark? I've heard it is good for migraines and headaches.
Yeah. Viridian Nutrition, we do a B complex, which is called high 2, meaning it has elevated B2, but it's in complex with all the other B vitamins from the B family. So I can pass the link on and you can maybe have a look at it and see if that's something that's going to be suitable, by all means.
Yeah, all right. Look, Jenny, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really, really helpful and fascinating. And so if people want to find out a bit more about what Viridian offer, the website is viridian/nutrition.com. And if you want to email me, katie@lattelounge.co.uk, if there are any questions we haven't answered and you'd like me to ask Jenny, we will do that and we will get back to you. But there's a really great helpline at Viridian anyway. They're always happy to answer your questions. So thanks again, Jenny. And I hope that was really helpful to everyone. And we've recorded it. We're going to put it on our YouTube channel and share it everywhere. So take care and thank you everyone for joining us and have a good day.
Yeah, take care now.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.